I want to get your input on relationship alternatives. There's all kinds of issues with traditional relationships. Should we consider some alternatives? Thank you so much for joining us today on Second Act TV. Today I want to welcome back our very own guy's guy, Robert Manni. Thank you for joining us again, Robert.
Hello, Silka. Great to be here again. I
I
love
always
being here.
And I love having you here. Robert, of course, is the host of Guys Guy Radio and Television and the author of The Guy's Guide to Love. And today, Robert, a conversation, as I always say, perfect for you. I want to get your input on relationship alternatives at this stage. So many of us are starting over again. We don't want to get married. There's all kinds of issues with traditional relationships. Should we consider some alternatives? So what I really want to hear from you is, what do you think about these alternatives that are gaining momentum? Is this something that us older people would do? Now, the very first one, and here it's already been established that older people will do it. Does this surprise you? Swinging.
Okay, let me start by just a little context. I didn't get married until I got into my 50s, early 50s. So I had an opportunity to do just about everything I wanted to prior to that. And I've been happy in a monogamous, kind of old school, boring relationship since then. And it's a good thing. And I'm really glad that I waited. The most important thing, and we have all these 8 alternatives or so we're going to discuss, but it's about, I think most people, their biggest challenges is finding a relationship and finding a partner and developing a relationship. And these are like sub-segments. So that being said, swinging, has been around forever. And I don't know if human beings were meant to be monogamous. So my motto has always been, Silka, as we've discussed, is there's not enough love in the world. So if you can find a relationship that where there's 3 people involved or more, as long as there's love and the energy is positive, if it's just for sex, I think you have to be careful about that, because when you do have intimacy of a physical standpoint, there is emotion that goes with that,
Yes.
and there's an exchange of energy. So I'm not going to judge swinging, whatever works.
Yeah.
If you can pull it off, great. If it's something that works for everybody and there's love involved, if it's a Bob Carroll, Ted and Alice, or whatever, like the old movie, if you can do it, I'm not here to judge anybody for what works for them. And it could, I would say, it's possible that it could enhance a relationship, but there's a lot of ifs that come with that. So I would just be careful when you get into swinging, because it can open up, swing one way or the other. It opens up literally a lot of doors.
Oh, that's funny. I got all kinds of visuals there. I think why swinging is so popular with older adults is, I guess, because the stalemate you might hit after so many years of marriage. That's what it says. And that's one of the keys about swinging. It's a married, committed couple that then participates with other couples, but you stay committed and you stay married. It's very, very interesting. It doesn't surprise me. I'll share something here with you. About 5 years ago, I discovered that clothing optional is, that's like the majority of clothing optional resorts are over 50. I read that, you're kidding me. And again, my producer mind popped in. Anyway, long story short, I actually went to one and interviewed them. I'll link to the interview. And it was amazing that these were over 50, way over 50, some of them.
It makes sense, because people, I think, when they get over 50 and they're in a couple, and maybe it's a long-term relationship where one person's a little more sexual than the other person, and for whatever reasons they have different needs, and if one partner wants to make the other happy, that okay, he or she needs a little bit of side play now and then, or whatever you would call that's okay. It's when it's 2 couples full on, that becomes complicated, because you have to satisfy the needs of 4 people. So I can see that these resorts could work, and that over 50 couples can compartmentalize the sexual activity to the point where it could enhance a relationship. But again, it's always up to the individual. And to me, if it all comes down to love and trying to please your partner and strengthen your relationship, if sharing with another couple works, I'm not here to judge one way or the other. Whatever works for you, as long as it's consensual, as long as there's love in it, and again, there's not enough love in the world.
Yeah. Well, I just want to clarify the clothing optional is not swinging. It was literally clothing optional. But there's a lot of swingers that do go there, but they can't swing. So I've learned about it, and I'm not surprised by it, and I find it fascinating. And like you said, no judgment. So I get that. I get that. What I don't get are the next ones we're going to talk about. So let's see if this could actually apply to our demographic. Monogamish. So let me give you a quick definition: that a relationship that is mostly closed but allows the occasional outside partner in the right situation. For example, sleep with someone else as long as you're at least 100 miles from home.
Well, first of all, the name, just by the name Monogamish, it sounds like it's something you go and get at the bagel shop on. So right there, it makes me think like, what is this? Some made up term. The idea that 100 miles means something is, I think, ridiculous, because it could be 3 miles, it could be 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
What's the difference? What's happening is what counts. So I don't think geography plays a role in this, unless it's about proximity, where because it's 100 miles, you're not going to be able to see that person very often. But in today's world, you can jump on a small plane or whatever. You can be 100 miles in a car pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem to make sense in terms of that boundary, if you will. That's an artificial boundary in my opinion.
I agree with you. I just think that one's silly. But anyway, monogamish. Next one, friends with benefits. Now, you and I did a whole segment on this that got thousands of views and comments. So, friends with benefits is something that seems to be very popular in our demographic. What do you think?
If it can work for you, it can work for you. But once again, things get complicated. You go to buy coffee. No, who's just gets a cup of coffee anymore? There's all types of variables you have there. So when you have friends with benefits, how do you make sure that both people have the same understanding? If you have one friend, and then if you're both single and you just want to have sex together, well, that begs the question, well, why wouldn't you want to do more? If you like that person enough to have sex with them, can't you have a relationship? The idea, the concept, and there was a movie about it, and it sounds like fun, friends with benefit. If you can pull it off, great. But usually there's a lot more in the wagon behind that that we have to take into consideration to make it work. If you can make it work and both people are fine with it, cool.
Yeah, exactly. I agree that we can't overlook the emotional part. It always creeps into this stuff.
Let me just say one thing. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Maybe I think for men, friends with benefit is a no-brainer. Any guy will tell you, friends with benefits, I can have sex with you and that's it? Cool. So just be aware, ladies. Guys are going to like the friends with benefit. Now, you might think, hey, he's a hunky guy, but I don't like hanging around with him. But maybe roll around, rumple the sheets up together. That'll be fun. Okay, that could happen also. But for the majority, the vast majority, most guys, I think you'll find will say, friends with benefits, I don't have to do any of this other stuff. Cool, I'm in. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought that was important.
That's really fun. No, and I agree with you. It's a great arrangement. I think women are coming around that way too, so I think that might actually go both ways. So based on some of the comments we've gotten on the other one, here's one, Robert. Polyamory. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but the practice of engaging in multiple romantic or intimate relationships simultaneously with the consent and knowledge of all parties. And this is not to be confused with polygamy, because polygamy is actual marriage. You have a spouse. What do you think?
Another name for it is online dating, because invariably the people you meet online dating, they're dating like 10 people at the same time anyhow. And I think everybody's with their scheduling all, they have backups to backups to backups. So I think this is just the way people date nowadays because it's become so much easier to connect with people and connect with new people and test people out and then ghost them or throw them aside, that the whole dating has become so easy that it's become more difficult to create a relationship because the pool is so much wider and it's so easy, so much easier to get rid of people you're not interested in. Everybody becomes disposable. So I think we're living in a polymorphic culture right now, and I think it can be a problem actually because with so much variety, it's difficult. It's one more hurdle for people to get over to say, hey, I just want to date this one person.
Okay, here's the next one. Polyfidelity. The definition, polyfidelity looks a lot like you'd expect a monogamous relationship to look, just with more than two people. And it's also called a thruple. I know you interviewed somebody on this. What is this and would that work for us?
Okay, I did interview a thruple rather, and it was three guys, and I asked them, well, how do you manage the Saturday night? Like, who's with who, or like, what if somebody's not in the mood, and like, do you play favorites, and how does that all work? And they said, we're three people, and we make our determination. If somebody wants to watch TV, they can. If two of us want to go out, that's cool also. I didn't get into the intimacies beyond that, of course, for the show, but it seemed like they managed to find a flow. And I think that's what's important, where you make it work for everybody. And in the case of these three guys, it was working. So cool, good for them.
Yeah, well, and I guess with more at our age, where there's more women than men, I don't know. Maybe two women, one man. They're monogamous though, right? You're supposed to be.
Well, in this case of the guys I interviewed, yes, they were monogamous. They stayed together. But if you, for what you just suggested, like a guy with two women, I think you'll find a lot of, particularly over 50, a lot of men will be raising their hands, like I get two.
Yeah, what comes to mind for me is that could just be a really good companion relationship too. I mean, with maybe where sex isn't the dominant component. So I don't know. Whatever. If it works for you, great. Open relationships have been around forever too, but I don't know how well those work out. That's like, well, monogamous, polyamory, and swinging are also types of open relationships. It usually means that they are pursuing sexual connections outside of the main or primary partner. I don't know. To me, that causes nothing but trouble.
I would agree with you, and then I think the biggest issue is it both people. So maybe the guy's a real horn dog and the wife's not into it anymore, and she's like, go ahead, get what you want. But that comes with problems because you're bringing home possible STDs. You're bringing home, you're actually, there's an emotional connection you're probably making if you're having something on the side, because the other person that you're with is a human being and they're just not going to be a receptacle for you. If they have any self-esteem, they're going to want more than that at a certain point. It happens all the time. So I think it's Pandora's box, if you will, when you open up to an open relationship, and you have to be really have your stuff together to be able to pull it off. Can it be done? I'm sure it can be done. Should it have some limitations with it? I think so. To make it work, I think you're going to have some guardrails there. Can it work? I think it can work, but I don't think it's easy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'll be interested to hear the comments on this. I'm sure we'll get lots of them. But that's never that. I don't know. I've never thought that was a good idea. Two more, and then we'll close. This makes sense for our generation: platonic and chosen family. That you just start relationships that aren't built around sex. That these are, it says here, not all intimate relationships involve sex or romance. Choosing to build a life or family other than the traditional ones is, why not?
I'm totally down with that. I mean, it's like, of course, family, it doesn't have to be your given, the family you were born into. You develop other families along the way, and they say we have a soul family and all of that. So I think, it's one, we're all one humanity. So if you develop different types of structures that feel familial, anybody can be family. It doesn't have to be biological.
Well, see, I think at our age, the platonic or just, again, creating your own family, a lot of us have lost our families. We're either divorced,
right?
widowed, our parents are mostly gone. So I don't know. I think that's something, really nice to consider. Lastly, and I do not get this. I do not get this. I mean, I looked up the definition. I read an article. I still don't get it. Relationship anarchy. That relationship anarchists believe that all forms of intimacy are valid and don't necessarily prioritize their lovers or romantic relationships above their friends. And what does that even mean?
I worked in advertising for many years, and one of the new creative guys came on board in a leadership role, and he had controlled chaos was his theme. And I'm like, controlled chaos, it seems to fly in the face, the two words. And it didn't work. And this is, I think it's the same thing here. Relationship anarchy, a relationship shouldn't be anarchy. Anarchy means really anything kind of goes, no rules, revolution type of thing. Everything's out the window. Can you make that work? I think people have enough of a challenge with a one-on-one relationship or even finding a partner, whereas to put it in a box and say, we're going to have relationship anarchy because half the relationships out there are anarchies anyhow, unfortunately, and not by design. So I think that one's a little bit out there. If you can get to that point where you can try something out like relationship anarchy, you probably have a really good relationship if you can go into that camp, if you will.
What came up for me when I was reading this is like, this sounds like the old hippie, movement. There's something here that the younger people might be trying to create that's never going to work. So I don't know. I included it because it's just so crazy. And, if you want to look it up and read about it might just make interesting reading. Well, Robert, as usual, thank you. I think there's a lot to think about here. I think some of the stuff is very relatable, other is not. But, alternatives, if they work for you. Anything else you want to add before we close?
Yeah, and I think it's important. I think we have to learn to walk before we run and crawl before we walk. So I think the main goal is to get into a relationship, a partnership, particularly when you're over 50, that feels right. How you end up defining it, it could fall into one of these 8 buckets. That's cool. But first of all, get into a relationship where you meet somebody and you can relate to them and you enjoy each other's company and share love and whatever comes with that. And then if you want to get into these other categories and as part of it, and that works for you, good for you.
Absolutely. Robert, thank you. We'll see you again soon
My
on
pleasure.
Second Act TV.
Bye, everybody.
If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. The button is right here. Just click on through to YouTube, and when you see the little bell right next to the subscribe button, hit that too, and we'll notify you every time we launch a new video. See you next time.